I'll get started on Copilot governance then. All right, so I'm going to talk about governance and information protection and all about how you can prepare your organization to deploy Copilot so that you have a safe and secure and positive deployment when it's rolled out in your organization. So firstly, why is this important? So as we were just talking about, so Copilot won't show any information to people that they don't already have access to see. However, in a lot of tenants, a lot of customers, often people do have access to files or folders they're not meant to. So as a lot of changes get made, as different engineers make changes to permissions, people come and go, files and folders get moved around, permissions can become messier, and that might mean that currently you might have people in your organization that have access to documents and they might have no idea that they have access to them. And before Copilot, they would need to know where that is, what it's called, where to look for it. But because Copilot helps people by surfacing information to them more easily, can mean that can come up even they've already got access. So making sure that the security is in place and the permissions are correct is really key before Copilot is deployed. We also want customers and organizations to be comfortable with their security, with their permissions, with the level of sharing in their organization so that they feel confident to roll it out and to fully adopt it in their business. So it's important that that's all done first as well before Copilot is deployed. So you have a positive rollout, you're not having to halt adoption at any point because of there being kind of something coming up with the security. But also with or without Copilot, it's important. So whether you have Copilot or not, making sure that your data governance strategy is in place and you have security in place is really important. It's also a continuous process. So it's not something that's really like set and forget. You can get your security and your permissions and everything in place initially, but it does need to be something that you continue to look at. So, we've got new employees join or people changing roles. Yep.
Where is that settings set? You set access to.
In terms of like SharePoint or?
You don't have access to things that don't.
So that's like I'm talking about like data or file permissions. So that would be your groups, your SharePoint permissions, depending on how that's set up. I'll take you through ways to look at that in a little bit in this. So something you need to regularly review and look at permissions and look at your security. And same with if your business requirements change or your industry regulations, privacy laws change. It is important that it's something that continues to get looked at. So these are so we know about zero trust, which is, and there are 6 foundations, 7, in terms of preparing your organization to make sure that you have the foundations of zero trust set up for your organization. So firstly, you've got to deploy and validate your data protection. So that's looking at making sure your data is categorized with sensitivity labels. And we'll go through that a little bit later in the presentation as well. Looking at how employees are using sensitivity labels in your environment, making sure you've got DLP policies in place, retention policies, and all of that around your data protection. Identity and access policy, so this is your conditional access, your MFA, making sure that people are using strong authentication to access your Microsoft services. App protection policies, so that is for devices, so app protection policies, they can work on mobile devices, they can work on Windows devices, and on mobile, for example, that can be to control what data can be copied into other apps. So you could stop people from copying information from a company app like Outlook, for example, into a personal app on mobile. So even if the device isn't managed, you still have the ability to protect that from going into other applications on phones. Then device management and protection. So that is using, so we've got Microsoft Intune. So that is to manage your devices, and you can put in policies to enforce things like making sure people are signing into Copilot. So they're using Copilot for commercial data protection when they're using Copilot for the web, things like that. If you've got Defender for endpoint as well, you can monitor the types of apps that people are using. Threat protection, that's your Defender for Office 365, Defender for endpoint again, or Defender for business, and Exchange Online protection. Secure collaboration in Teams, So there's like 3 different levels that Microsoft recommend in terms of setting your team's permissions up, which is there's a baseline option, a sensitive option, and highly sensitive, and you can select which one you want to kind of deploy. I will send you this, by the way, with links, and we'll go into this in more detail. This is like an overview, and then your user permissions as well. So that's your file permissions, your folder permissions. So these are all the things basically that need to be in place to ensure that you have a secure deploy, and I'll go through. Yep.
Do you get any support from Copilot for setting these permissions or validating them? Usually a lot of permissions with a lot of organizations, with a large organization.
Side, I mean, it depends on how big your organization is, the current state. They might already be correct, they might not. Copilot for Microsoft 365 won't do that. It's Copilot for security. Help with permissions.
But it's not, don't think of it as permissions, because it's writing policy, finds what sensitive information is, what the age of it is, using all that input from Graph, and then the policy applies permissions to users to access that information, or Copilot for that user to access that, so we can control it that way.
Yeah, usually this is a pretty big task and very error prone.
Yeah, and that's why it's an ongoing process. It's that feedback loop. You do it, you tweak it, you tweak it, you tweak it. You can't be perfect out of the box. You can't unbox Copilot, put it into an environment, and expect it to work exactly the way you want. But, you know, part of that data governance is Copilot's going to work with the data you've got. If the data you've got hasn't been cleansed, it's got really old data in there, it's got incorrect data, you're going to get results like, there are cats on the moon, that sort of stuff. So make sure that, first off, for most customers, is understanding what you actually have. You ask most customers, they have no idea. Does it reside? Is it on those endpoints that I have no control of? Do I need to centralize it? Do I need to apply labels to endpoints as well as try storage? Poll again.
You've created the zero trust already before you pick a box to say Copilot go. Are there any particular requirements within Nation and Trust that need to be done 100%?
No, so this is not, you don't need to do any of this. This is recommendations. So you can just buy a license and start using it if you want to. This is like and I'm going to go.
To me, everybody should do this, but a lot of people don't. Hence why their zero trust is like about 15%, whereas mine's, I think, 65.
So in terms of like, you don't need to have this all in place immediately to start using Copilot, and there is the option to use SharePoint restricted search, which you can use as an interim solution while you work on getting the security in place first. So if your security is there, you know that everything's correct, and you're comfortable with deploying it, you can go ahead. But otherwise, you can enable SharePoint restricted SharePoint search in the meantime as an interim option. So that allows you to basically you get a curated list of up to 100 sites that Copilot can access. So what you could do initially is maybe you make an allowed list for Copilot, which would be maybe it's your kind of more open within the organization SharePoint sites, and you do that initially. People can start using Copilot on Teams, on email, on their own documents, but your SharePoint sites that you know need some work, you can kind of block those off temporarily and then work on the permissions and then make them available once you're ready to do that. So this is an option. Do be aware though that this does also apply to enterprise search. If you put this in place, you will be restricting search to those sites as well. But this is a good option to kind of use while you're working on the security in parallel, so you're not having to delay your adoption of Copilot.
Sorry, there's a hand line.
Oh.
Michelle.
Oh yeah, Michelle. Oh, sorry.
Hi, yes. I mean, the reality is, though, is that most SharePoint sites are not well architected. They don't have good metadata. They don't have good visibility over the differences between, for instance, draft documents and documents that are published and therefore able to be or should be consumed. And when you turn Copilot on, if the architecture of those sites is such that you're going to get the development version of a document that's, and 5 older versions of the same kind of policy, as an example, this can cause real issues. So I think fundamentally, turning on, using the restricted search when you're turning Copilot on is probably the safest option for the largest majority of organizations until they get the architectures and the metadata frameworks and all the other governance pieces in place in their SharePoint spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I do have other like customers as well who actually use it too when they've when their SharePoint environments are really oh, there's so much work to do here. They've actually used it to built like a SharePoint site for Copilot information they want it to just look at. So they put all their new and up to date things, so build a new site so that you can work it that way as well if you want to.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just a question on the turning search off. That's for everything. When you then want to flick it back on again, my understanding is there's no command to turn everything back on again. You have to do it all manually. Is that correct?
I don't know actually from my head.
And that there's no.
I think that is correct. I think you have to apply the search back to the individual site level, so it's not as easy as just going click, turn it off here. It's a lot more manual than that. Which is why a lot of organizations start to use some of the external tools to support the SharePoint and 365 infrastructure so that some of those kinds of things are easier to do.
Our sponsor AvePoint actually had some pretty good tools.
I was going to say.
Thank God as well. Yeah.
Yes, AvePoint is very, very good at doing all of those things, but there are others, obviously.
It's a good thing though, because then as you're applying it, you go, oh, I didn't realize we had that. Just
Exactly. Yeah, we're planning, AvePoint's going to come and give us a quick preso of their tooling, I think next month, perhaps. Yeah, we're organising that.
having extra tools to manage it, obviously from a Microsoft perspective is cool, but yeah.
When AvePoint are coming to do the presentation, it would be good to ask them to do the Opus presentation as well as the Policies and Insights presentation, because they have different tool sets, but the Opus tool is really the records management tool. The Policies and Insights tool is all about all of the reporting and about who's got access where and what kind of data is where and all of that sort of stuff. But the governance and provisioning tool will help with things like what we were talking about earlier, that sort of single pane of glass around permissions and who's got permissions where and why, without having to go through the manual tasks of getting that out of your compliance center.
That's awesome. Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, that's it. We'll let them know.
And just quick FYI, I don't work for AvePoint.
Another question there, Lauren.
Yeah, so the restricted SharePoint searches basically block everything with an allow list. Is there a version of restricted SharePoint search that's allow everything with a block list? So
You can block like individual sites from being part of search, which would also apply to Copilot, but the restricted search thing is just an allowed list. Right, and you decide that way, unless anyone else knows. You have questions there? Oh, okay, sorry, I thought you just heard. There are, and this is in the slides, there are some really some good kind of paths in terms of preparing your organization based that Microsoft have, and these will be in the slides depending on your licensing. So there's 3 different, got like the core, and then you've got the best in class. I'm going to go through now individually what these things are that are included in this. But firstly, preparing your SharePoint data is really important. So archiving old and deleting old and relevant data. So Copilot and focus on relevant information, or you could achieve that by, blocking or adding sites to a list. But yeah, tidying up your data so that Copilot is focusing on the most up-to-date information will help with preventing there being confusion or things and answers. It's also recommended to structure your files and folders in your sites logically, so financial reports under a finance folder. Adding metadata to your files as well is really going to help with Copilot finding information in its responses. Tagging your content, so using labels, using metadata tags on files, on emails, on pages to make sure that you have labeling and metadata in files. It's also recommended to use descriptive file names. So rather than using abbreviations in your file names, if you use like more descriptive file name, that will also help with Copilot. And trying to retain the final version of documents, so encouraging people to remove older versions of documents and keep the final one, rely on Microsoft versioning as well, and then just generally encouraging good data hygiene habits. So making sure people are saving their documents to OneDrive, to SharePoint, that they're using standardized file names, deleting content they don't need.
The final versions of the document,
Yeah.
would it pay to obviously have a system that when you've obviously checked it back in and everything's okay, you've got a new version to auto script on SharePoint with Power Automate to actually back up the old ones, because who knows, somebody realizing, whoops, we actually have made a mistake, we need to go back to the other file, and you can't because you
Versioning.
Yeah.
It's much better to have one source of
So
truth.
does Copilot still look inside old versions though?
Like on the document
So
version,
it's
it would
saying
look the
about-
most recent version, but you could recover old versions of that document using versioning.
Okay.
That's what I would do. Sorry, yes.
Question. If I want to use Copilot in my organization,
Mhm.
is it possible to use like a glossary with the all abbreviation to the Copilot?
You can set up.
Not in every
Yeah.
chat, but know how to say it, not in the code of Copilot, but say, hey, you're Copilot of my organization. This is our abbreviatures, what we're using. Please
Mm.
treat it as this, because I don't want to rename files.
You can set up acronyms in 365 in the search. I don't know if Copilot to that, but you can set up like organization like acronyms and put your own like descriptions in there, and that applies to search. So I imagine that will apply to Copilot as well.
For Copilot to remember this, because
Viva Topics.
it's every time.
Yeah, Viva Topics does that. Yeah. Yeah.
I think you could also consider maybe looking at the term store for something like that. Acronyms.
Is it yes or not? I don't understand your answer. Is it possible or not possible?
I have done it in I normally set them up in like the admin center when you go and add like acronyms. I haven't tested whether the Copilot picks it up. I imagine it does because it applies to search, like enterprise search. So I would think so, but I can test and come back to you.
Yeah, but like there's no like control panel where you can figure
for
Copilot to
specifically,
say,
yeah.
this is how I want you to act for my business.
So to sum up, it's impossible to do it at this stage.
It's impossible, like straight out of the box with a single click sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like there's no control to do that, but you can help it do that by configuring some other stuff. It's not a direct control, but it's an indirect control that you can do.
What sort of industry are you in? A specialist industry that has
Yeah,
abbreviations a little bit like technology.
that's manufacturing industry. But we also have our short names. And that's what I'm asking. Instead of put every time, just this is our abbreviatures and use my token for the chats.
It's pretty good within a single document, as long as people don't get lazy and just use abbreviations. If you have it in full and then the abbreviation in brackets, Copilot seems to pick up on that. Where it sees that abbreviation again, it knows what it means. But it's document by
Not
document.
realistic. This tactic is not realistic. To use an abrasive explanation of.
I'll test because I've got the acronyms thing set up in my demo tenant. So after the slides, I can test and see if it picks up on them if you want, if that's helpful.
Like Microsoft's notorious for all of our acronyms. Like
Yeah.
we've got hundreds of acronyms that we use. Yeah. Like our Copilot works fine. Because most people.
SPF was a new one last week.
SPF and ESIF and all that sort of stuff, so most people refer to it by the acronym anyway. If you did type out the whole thing, then it'll probably still find it because it's been referred to as both things.
The graph sort of like sees that relationship between the abbreviation and the word
the full
in a document.
Yeah.
The model is pre-trained. It's not trained on our acronyms or your acronyms. Grounding piece that Daniel talked about. What does this mean in the context of my business?
And SharePoint permissions. So something to recommend to look at your SharePoint permissions. So reviewing what they are for SharePoint and OneDrive. So looking at the wide scope permission group. So that's your like everyone but external users group that you have in SharePoint. You can hide that so people can't select that as an option. There's also sharing link reports in OneDrive and in SharePoint, so you can see all of your files and who they've been shared with. So that's a way for users to be able to look at, who they've shared what with and decide if they want to remove any links. They can look at that report. You can also look at that for SharePoint as well. Also looking at your sharing settings in the SharePoint Admin Center. So look at what your default file links are. There's a few settings in there like that, regardless of Copilot, I always recommend, turn off the option that allows guests to share items they don't own. Look at your expiry, set the default, if you've got a SharePoint site that is for, making a separate one for external sharing, for example, so it's not mixed up with your internal content. So reviewing those sharing settings. Also educating your site and team owners, so making sure that they are aware of the sharing reports and that they're recipients of the approval notification. So when people share sites or share content, you can set that up so that the owners get a notification they have to approve that. We talked about like semantic index, so understanding the changes in that and how that implicates search of Copilot, and also looking at inactive sites and making sure that you haven't got any inactive sites that still have information that that's kind of controlled. If you have SharePoint Advanced Management, there are additional tools you can do to help with this. So, for example, you can restrict SharePoint sites to be just specific groups that can access it. So you could say, only this Microsoft 365 or security group can access this site, and that overrides any other sharing or permissions that are in place. When you do that, the documents will still, if those people previously had access, they search something in search, it will come up in the little search part, but when they click on it, they won't be able to access the content. You can look at like data access governance reports for SharePoint sites. There are change history reports, so you can look at changes that have been made to sites. You can block people from downloading like meeting recordings or downloading from particular SharePoint sites. Do policies to monitor inactive sites so that, if there's been a SharePoint site that's been inactive, the owners are notified after a period of time and then they get to choose an action. So there is the SharePoint Advanced Management license if you want to have these like additional reports. I think there's also one around the data access governance reports. You've got sharing link reports in that. You've got reports around what content in your sites isn't labeled, things like that. Just on the sharing links, because I just like the customers I work with, there is quite a bit of confusion around how this works with Copilot. So when you use the people in my organization link, so if I go to share a file and I select people in my organization, like everyone in my organization, this does not make the content immediately available to everyone in the organization with Copilot. They do need to actually have the link and basically click on that to be able to, or sometimes that automatically happens when you're sent it via email or Teams chat, but it's not going to make it immediately available by Copilot. So the specific people one, where you actually you specify the person you're sharing that with, whether that be, you can do that with internal or external users, that link will be made available. So Copilot. So if you do share someone in that specific people option, then that content does become available to them via search and via Copilot.
I impersonate the user. I have access to connect to a different computer via my own PC. Copilot have access to impersonate a user's content, the searches or query.
What do you mean by impersonate?
I can right click on my computer and go connect to a different computer. Connect
Compromise identity.
hacking.
So yeah, that's so if you right click connect to someone else's computer, you are just connecting to their local machine. You are not necessarily de-authenticating to Copilot.
No.
So the answer is no.
Thank you.
All right. So onto information protection. So firstly, so we'll talk about some different Microsoft Purview tools you can use to for information protection. So firstly, you've got sensitivity labels. Highly recommend that these are deployed alongside Copilot. Sensitivity labels apply protections to content. They travel with the content wherever it basically ends up. So if you've got a label that says this is internal only, and I send that to someone externally and I attach it, maybe send it to them externally, even though it lands in their mailbox, when they try to open that document, they have to authenticate, so they won't be able to access that content. Same if you've got someone internally who downloads a bunch of content onto their local machine and it's labeled to be internal only, for example. If they leave the organization on bad terms and you disable their Microsoft account, they can't access that anymore because they still have to authenticate to access that content. So really important, both because a lot of data loss happens, data leaks, it can be malicious, but a lot of it's accidental when people email something to the wrong person, another company, same name as their colleague, things like that. And talk about how getting those like SharePoint permissions is important, but that's kind of a static thing, right? It doesn't stop someone from moving the HR sensitive folder into the all company SharePoint site. If that content's still labeled, you're still protected in that scenario. So yeah, highly recommend deploying that, and you can apply with those encryption content markings if you want to mark something as confidential, something like that. When in terms of like how Copilot works, so users need to have the extract and the view use rights. If you're setting up that label, those are the two things a user needs for Copilot to be able to return the data. Extract is like the same as copy. That's what that function is. And when you're using this with Copilot, so if you're prompting Copilot, I just said Copilot graph kind of chat, I just want to shorten that, but that's what I mean by that. And you like ask Copilot a question and it responds to you and has citations to documents. If they're labeled, those will show in the response from Copilot, so you'll be able to see the label that's applied to that content. It's always going to be the highest priority label that is shown there. And it's inherited. So if you're in Word, for example, and you are drafting a document and you reference a file that has a sensitivity label, that is automatically inherited to the content that you're generating. Users do have the option, you can change that if you want to, but it will automatically be applied. And again, it will be the highest priority label that does get applied. Questions? Data loss prevention as well. So data loss prevention policies are around basically they identify sensitive information in your content and they apply protection settings based on that. So that could be, there's a bunch of pre-existing sensitive information types you can use: credit card numbers, bank account numbers, ID numbers, addresses, heaps of different things that you can use. You can also create custom sensitive information types as well. That could be based on maybe a product code that you have, a client names. It could be a document template that would be considered sensitive. And then data loss prevention policies will, when they identify that sensitive information, they'll apply those protections. So for example, you might have a policy that says that no sensitive financial information can be shared externally. And then if someone tries to email a credit card number externally, that would be caught and blocked. So that's what data loss prevention policies are doing.
There are ways, depending on the user, and you wish to share that particular document with somebody, is there a way of redacting automatically because it's an external user? External users can see the general information, but they can't see the sensitive information.
You can do redacted information, can't you?
I don't think it's automatic as far as a DLP
Not yet.
policy goes.
Yeah. Because often, when stuff gets leaked to, for example, if there was an automated process, then that whole concept of, sorry, you can see this information, that's sensitive. And so, therefore,
you can do it as part of
generic information.
E-discovery case. You're preparing stuff for e-discovery. You can first glimpse for your lawyers, and they can redact anything that's not particularly to defence. But
so the discovery,
not as part of DLP or information protection.
Okay. Looks like Michelle will have a.
Sorry, I just wanted to say again that one of the AvePoint tools does actually give you the visibility of that stuff. So make sure they demonstrate them to you.
You sure you don't work for them, Michelle?
100% sure. Don't sell their products. I just have used them and I've implemented them many times. And yeah, it's a pretty cool set of tools. But everything comes at a price, right?
Yeah.
That's what you get
about their compliance stuff.
Also, retention policies can apply to Copilot interaction. So when I say interaction, that's your prompt. It's also the response from Copilot and any links or documents referenced and the text from Copilot. So this is when you are creating a. Oh wait, no, this is later. Sorry, I was going to add something. I realized that's a later thing. when you were creating like a retention policy, the location is Teams chats, and that's now what was Teams chats is now Teams chats and Copilot interactions. So when that is selected, you're retaining both your Copilot interactions and your Teams chat messages. If you have any existing retention policies that had Teams chat selected as a location, Copilot will now automatically be included in that. Might be use cases for that. I'm pretty sure it's so in terms of what's retained, when people are using Copilot like GraphQL Chat or Copilot Microsoft 365, I think it's around like 30 days that's like retained, if I remember correctly. But unless people delete it, so users can delete their own like chats from Copilot, or they can delete their own Copilot history. So you can go into the My Account settings and delete your interaction history. If retention's already there, then it is. But you can do that, yeah. If you go into My Account, that's your history. You can delete that. So, but if you say you wanted to be able to go back and see, maybe someone sent some information, created some content, and you want to go back and see how that kind of came about to exist, what the prompt was, what the response was, if you've got retention labels on, you can do that. If you have any kind of compliance reason to keep that information for a certain amount of time.
Lauren, did you say that if somebody has prevented their searches being retained, that overrides this, or this overrides the other? Which way around is it?
Retention will override the user deletion thing.
Because you've got to look at it from a top level from security. If I leave the company, if I try to delete my information, sorry.
No, I understand the logic there, but I thought it was the other. No.
Copilot. Oh, sorry. Copilot. I'm so bad with mics. I forget they're there. Copilot interactions are stored in the user's mailbox. So there's a hidden like folder, kind of like with your Teams chats, which is for Copilot interactions. It's not accessible by users or by admins, except through like e-discovery tools and stuff. E-discovery. Yeah, use that to look at the prompt.
Secret files.
E-discovery on you, so make sure you clean up your mailbox and everything that's sensitive, and then I'll just go and look at your deleted mailbox, so let's be hunting for it.
Another option you can implement as well is information barriers. I actually don't come across a whole lot of clients who use this personally, but this allows you to restrict two-way communication. So if you've got say you've got two different departments in your organization and they can't talk to each other or communicate, you can prevent that. It is two-way only, so you can't say like, I don't know, Lauren's team can talk to Paul's, but Paul's can't talk to me, but we can restrict it so both teams can't talk to each other. And when you set those up, that will apply to, they'll prevent you being able to say you've got it, so I can't talk to Paul's team, then I can't message him, I can't start a call with him, I can't dial him into a meeting, share files with him. Yeah, so it's blocking that within an organization.
What could be the example somebody will implement like that thing? It will increase more communication in the organization.
I think there's like some, maybe you've got like for like a legal purpose, like
Tip, if you've
day
got
traders team.
employees knowing information about what's going to be happening with the share price, you don't want
the
CFO talking to that might leak it. Legal, quite common. Yeah, the firm also defence and prosecution have that separation.
Also, quite often you would have in organisations that have holding companies or other organisations that form part of the global organisation, they might have Chinese walls of information between those groups. So they don't want any communication going between those groups internally.
Okay.
It's Oxley as well, so you're not HIPAA, that's health.
Do you have any examples of case study where it has been implemented in our organization? Let have any features where it actually helps?
Copilot doesn't have features to do like the cleanup of the data. That's when you can use like the Chef ones or AvePoint or something like that to do that. In terms of use cases, like, I mean, I do have clients who've like implemented it. Our company has, there are Microsoft use cases that are available for certain customers. So I can definitely send you some links to those.
Like in previous instances of this years ago, we've had Fonterra.
Yeah, Fonterra is really good.
Talking about their experience implementing it. I think they did an initial 300 users and now they've expanded past 1,000 users of Copilot because they're getting so much value out of it. Genesis Energy is another one who's talked to us. There's tons of case studies We through
25 user groups, users at Southern Cross at the moment. Move to possibly a couple of hundred in a few months' time. And I would say from that zero trust list, we're probably 90% there on the list. Like, no, I would say we're 100% there, but we're pretty good on most. Yeah.
And not like all the things I'm talking about, you don't necessarily need to implement like all of this. Like information barriers aren't going to apply. For example, these are just, this is the session I'm just telling you about the different things you could implement to achieve your data governance strategy. But every company, like, deals a lot of clients, they're all at different stages. You might have a lot of this already done. You might be starting from scratch. So it just depends. And yeah, so
part of the DICA rollout with Copilot has been the follow-up around data governance, which is Purview, and doing workshops on Purview tools that are available to you there. So it's a separate tool to Copilot, but it allows you to get on top of data governance stuff.
And a security Copilot going to extend to Purview at some point?
There's just an announcement around that, yeah. Like, yeah.
With Lauren talked a lot about the blocks and things. We can also set alerts in Purview. So I can see if there's interactions with Copilot and the data, or that data's been copied off somewhere else. And then I've got Cloud App, the Casper as well, so I can actually block it being exported to. And so it's that Microsoft story of don't look at it as separate components. Security is across your whole environment. It's not just about your Copilot interactions. The question about moting onto somebody else's computer, I took that to mean that you had a legit user's credentials and you logged into their cloud environment. You'll have Copilot available to you, but you need to have conditional access with a multi-factor that's going to say, hey, look, I don't usually log in from a Kali Linux device. Go, who am I? Build up that intelligence around who that actual user is. So first principle, zero trust, verify explicitly. Username and password is not enough. I need to know more before I let you go and search through my whole environment and surface a whole lot of material to exfiltrate. Then alert when they do exfiltrate.
Another thing that you could look at implementing is a terms of use policy with conditional access. So it's a very good idea to have a generative AI policy for your business in terms of what you want, your kind of guidelines around what you want people to use it for. So if you do have one, you could create a conditional access policy that requires people to accept that policy before they get access to a service. So this is a good way to kind of enforce it for new and existing users. So if you've got Entra IDP one, that's included in that, and you can upload basically a PDF of your policy. You can upload multiple versions in different languages if you want to, so that and if you do that, it will be based on the user and their local settings and for language that they have in their like browser or the apps. That's what language will be used, and that's the version of the PDF that will show there.
Curiosity, is that terms of use acceptance logged somewhere?
You can see it in the like sign-in logs.
No, like within Entra or?
Yeah, within Entra. So you have to accept before you go any further.
Yeah,
so it's logged in Entra.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And you can do like options is whether you want people who like expand, like read the whole policy, or you can set an expiry date or how long you want until someone has to re-accept it, things like that. So you can control all of that. So a bit like how when you're setting up a named location in Entra, you would create a terms of use policy, and then you would use a conditional access policy to enforce that. With existing users, if they currently logged in, they do need to log out and log back in to acknowledge that policy. So I would recommend, if you're rolling that out, that you kind of communicate that and you say, please sign out and sign back in.
We're logging everybody out at midnight. You need to log back in the morning.
Just as a kind of clean up, then like waiting for people to eventually I would recommend encouraging
existing session.
Yeah. You can also use a user authentication context in a conditional access policy. This is where you can basically require additional requirements to get access to like a SharePoint site. So if you had a SharePoint site, maybe it's your sensitive finance one, you could say that in order to get access to that, they have to be signing in or accessing it from a managed device, or that they need to accept a terms of use policy, things like that. So you can do that in conditional access as well. Okay. I'm going to go on to tools to monitor Copilot interactions. So firstly, there is a Copilot activity as part of the Unified Audit Log in Microsoft Purview. So auditing is enabled now by default for new tenants. If you've got the standard audit logs are kept for 180 days. So any audit logs from after October 2023 are kept for 180 days. If audit logs for before that date were just 90 days, so that's kind of increased now. If you do have like E5, then you get audit logs for a year. But now there's an activity you can select, which is Copilot interactions, that will tell you the time, the app that was used, the document that was referenced as part of that interaction. So you can use that to see when and who has been interacting with Copilot. If you want to actually see the text that people have used in their prompt, then you can use content search, e-discovery. So because Copilot interactions are stored in the user's mailbox, when you select that as a location in content search or when you're doing an e-discovery case, then you'll be able to see the actual text that people that have used in their Copilot interaction and then the response as well. When you're doing that, this here is what you need to select in the conditions. You need to go type, so add and remove, and then you select Copilot interactions. So auditing is not going to give you the actual text, but in content search it will, so you can actually see that.
That's only if you've got permissions.
You do need permissions on top of even if you've got them, you need content or the e-discovery permissions.
Compliance.
So
you need to be above GA.
One of those roles.
Compliance admin, compliance manager, I think it is, or it's like an e-discovery investigator one or something as well.
One of those roles you create. I'm a Copilot content search admin. There's a zillion roles now. I'm assuming there'll be a role there somewhere.
I think to my knowledge, there's not a Copilot named admin role.
It falls under the compliance.
Yeah, they just use listing roles to do that.
Contributor, or e-discovery contributor, I can't remember. But they're all subject groups of different permissions on each. It sits above a GA because a GA can't actually see data.
There's usually like a new role almost every day now.
There are lots.
So many roles out there for different things.
It's granular.
Yeah.
It's good.
And if you want to do policies around monitoring people's interactions with Copilot, you can use communication compliance to do that. So that's looking for inappropriate or risky interactions that people have in the Microsoft 365 services. Also applies to Copilot, so that could detect if people were sharing information into Copilot prompts that was confidential or something like that. And then that allows you to kind of detect. So content search ultimately you do post-event, right? But this allows you to detect if something has happened in a Copilot interaction that is against a company policy. So just and that covers any interaction that's in basically all the Copilots in the different apps, Excel, Teams, Outlook, Loop, all of those different apps are covered under that. You can actually create a policy of communication compliance to look at all interactions as well if you want to. Otherwise, you could do it based on, say, there's specific keywords or something that you wanted that would trigger that. You can create a policy that just specific information shared into that, or you get everything and see more broadly how Copilot's being used. There's a couple of ways to do it. That is I haven't talked about licensing a lot through this. I try not to talk too much. I always do because I'm in distribution, but that is an E5 feature, so you do need to have E5 or one of the E5 add-ons to use it. But if you want to actually monitor what people are using it for, and then get alerts and then do actions around that, that's where communication compliance would come in. Cool. I'm early. That's everything I want to cover in this session. Were there any questions? Yes.
Hopefully, I'll be quick.
Oh, that's good.
Admin who run the Copilot, they can see the users requested and the Copilot answers. Any possibilities for users to use Copilot without their name, or if they delete the style still available through the admin point of view? For example, I'm like a user. I use Copilot. I don't want to share with my admin, like IT department, what I'm doing in Copilot. I don't want to share it. Just don't want to. If I delete the history of Copilot from my end, from my profile, will it delete it in the admin part, or not?
And
And
what-
they will see anyway what I did with Copilot.
If you've got like, it depends if you've got like retention on or not. So I think there's like, yeah, because if you're a retention policy, it's going to retain it for the amount specified. But if it's
No,
not,
I'm a regular user, like
Um,
no privilege.
but if you're not, if there isn't any retention policies, then it would be removed. There's an amount of time until it's like permanently deleted. I can't remember.
There's no, like no incognito mode for regular users with Copilot. Every my interaction with Copilot will be visible for admin.
Yep, it would if they've got like if they use those tools and they have it in place, and if like they can look at the prompts and things if they've got, if they look at content search and stuff like that. And then if you've deleted it, but there's a retention policy, then it is going to be retained for that retention policy amount of time that's specified. But if they don't have that in place and you delete your Copilot interaction history, then that would be removed. I don't think at the moment Copilot, like when you're in the web tab of Copilot, I don't think that is retained. I think there's something coming to be able to manage that, but at the moment it's not. Is my understanding that those interactions aren't kept, but the Copilot for Microsoft 365 ones, when you're using GraphGrunner and chat.
Something that you need to cover off in terms of use as well, that the prompts may be retained
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
in the organisation. If you're using a company Copilot,
Mm.
the expectation should be that the retained and responses are retained.
It applies to everything in like Microsoft 365. All of this is all existing technology. So same with your Teams chats, your emails, like all of this applies to that as well. So
In case if you're concerned about privacy, then don't use the business.
yeah,
Use your personal
Pro or something,
if you
Copilot
don't
Pro.
want.
Yeah.
Some of the chat's being retained. I think for Copilot for Teams, if I'm not mistaken, there's a setting to switch where Copilot can be used specifically during a meeting, but can't be used afterwards. So it doesn't
Yes.
create a record of the train
Yeah.
interaction. So that's
There's like
you
a-
flag governance forums or that where you don't want a transcript kind of left at the end of it. You just want whatever meeting notes you produced. So
Yeah,
I
that's
think
right. In your Teams menu, you can do basic Copilot about transcription, and then it will technically like create a temporary transcription while the meeting is running, and you can use the Copilot chat during meeting to ask Copilot questions about the meeting. But as soon as the meeting ends, there's no the transcription is deleted. There's no recap, no chat afterwards, no transcription. But yeah, for confidential stuff where you don't want them to, and then admins can't use eDiscovery, like Content Search, all of those tools to see the content from that meeting. But effectively, you could, before the meeting ends, you could, in your own Copilot chat while the meeting's running, you could say, summarize my action items from this meeting, or summarize, what we've talked about, and then you can take your own notes from that and then copy that and put that in your own place.
Or I'll create a sensitivity label and apply it to that meeting. And that sensitivity label governs who has access. If I've got an exit interview or an HR coming up, that will be available to the selected group post-meeting, but not wider of the organisation. Which raises the important question, when do we apply labels?
When do you apply them? Well, it depends if you're doing like manual labeling or automatic labeling.
Yeah,
So
manual labeling, when the data is created, is the best time to actually apply
Yeah.
a label. You can do automatic labeling based on, DLP is around identifying logical expression in there. But when people are creating documents, they have a good sense of the sensitivity of it. And if you look at government with the PSR records, there is guidance for their employees to understand what those labels mean, when to apply them.
Mm.
And they have a drop down and they apply the label. That's sent to somebody else. And admins can set it up. So if you think the label is incorrect, you have to provide a justification for it, or you can set it that the label can't be changed and lowered.
yeah.
That is inherited to all emails and documents that are spawned from that parent document. So if I reference it with Copilot, that label applies to the next document as well.
Because that comes from information rights management originally.
Yeah. So everything.
Compliance sensor.
When I actually worked for Auckland Transport, when I created a new document, I was prompted automatically to
Yeah.
give it some context.
Yeah.
So when other people search on the document, then I would have to check it in. Once it's checked in and published, anybody else can see it. But if I need to, but only I could change it, or somebody else could change it depending on how I
Yeah.
set it.
Yeah, which is, about security awareness training.
Yeah,
And in New Zealand, we unfortunately take a very narrow view that's about phishing training,
Yeah.
which is rubbish. It's teaching people about hey, the information that you're seeing, is personal, and that has an impact on other people if that goes out of their control. So you need to safeguard it. These are your obligations. Place a restriction on there. You see that it's going to be damaging for leads. So therefore apply sensitivity. And this is what the sensitivity label does. And it's fully auditable. So attribution's the wrong word. Now who did it? It's quite easy.
And if you apply that label so that it inherits by default into a document library, and somebody puts content into the library which is maybe in confidence and the library is marked as unclassified, then you can set it so that they will receive a notification that says, hey, you've actually put something in here which potentially may not be the right place for it to be. So there's lots of ways that you can use those sensitivity labels to really help educate your business around the kinds of things they should be doing and where they should be doing them.
And we also have the automatic labeling function. So if you've got historical files, you can comb back through those and classify them based on the content and apply a label automatically to it. You can, that backlog of that S&B share that you've got sitting over in the corner that everybody loves to put their office jokes into. 80% of it's CRUD, and we could probably delete it, cover all that storage. We can get on top of that with auto classification, auto retention policies, delete stuff that we don't need. That's just clogging up space. And also stuff that's past an age, and also if we are breached and this information gets out, if I've got a historical document going back way past the time when I should have deleted it, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. The cool thing about the information protection labels, it travels with it. So if we have a breached or compromised identity and someone logs in and syncs the SharePoint site, all the information in there needs to be authenticated back to view. If I know that identity has been compromised, I simply just either remove that identity or change their password. That person, the malicious actor, can no longer authenticate to get access to view that. So successfully extracted the data, but it's of no use to them.
Question on that historical data.
Yeah.
Is there any tool or something which you need to?
Yeah, so if it's on premise, we've got, it used to be called AIP scanner, but Microsoft marketing loves to change things every 12 months. So it went from Azure Information Protection, the Microsoft Information Protection. It's now Microsoft Purview Information Protection Scanner. It's part of an E5 or a Purview P2 license. Allows you to connect an on-premise to Purview and then do the auto labeling because it sees the metadata back.
So auto labeling is also really useful when you've got a proper retention disposal schedule that you can use, and you can apply that and create your Purview rules from that, and then have the whole thing work together so that it's labeling, applying some metadata if you're using Syntex or what is now called SharePoint Advanced or Extended or whatever they've decided to call it, and then use Purview to actually do the disposal in an auditable way and in a compliant manner so that you've got evidence of disposal and not just destruction. So all of those tools together work really, really well to give you that degree of governance and management over your data and your information.
As long as the business actually goes along and abides by their own retention policies and disposal. I had a large law firm that had a retention policy. After that retention policy was up, that material went for review and then deleted. The first time they actually had a deposition review, they went back to IT and the lawyers told them, oh, don't delete anything, just keep it.
Exactly, which is why you don't ask permission for disposal once you have an approved disposal authority. You inform the business you're doing it, you don't ask permission to do it.
Yeah. And then GDPR came along and we had a subject right request. So
exactly. And then you're in trouble, right?
Oh,
That's everything.
so yeah.
Yeah, that's me. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks a lot, Michelle, online.
Yeah, thank you for all that contribution as well.
Thank you. It's been really, really helpful. Really interesting.
Sounds like we should get you to run a session at some time, Michelle. Sounds like we've got a lot of information there.
I've got a lot of stuff in my head. Yep.
Awesome.
Reach out. We can talk.
Awesome. Thanks. Cool. All right. Any further questions from anyone or?
Actually, I don't know if I miss some of this. I got interacted in the.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were saying something about in the meeting, Copilot can record the summary. It's like from the meeting, what we're talking, or from
So
the slides we're showing.
So it's from what you say, right? So in the Teams meeting, the voice that happens in the Teams meeting gets transcribed if you enable that. And then the transcription essentially makes the voice into text, right? And then now that it's in text, the large language model is going to reason over it.
Right.
Essentially.
Yeah. And is that the special of a Copilot or?
So the M365 Copilot, which is integrated into Teams and the rest of the M365 stack, that's what enables that capability.
And how much would be the cost we are looking? Just
It's about, 50 Kiwi a month per user?
per user.
User.
Per user per month, yeah.
At the end of the day, $50 a month is nothing compared to the time taken to do other things in other ways. It will take you hours, whereas this will take you minutes.
That's just one of the capabilities of it.
Okay.
You know, so, I mean,
It's based on what you get.
And it can translate to different languages.
So like textual, this is a like so only I talk it, but it like takes your transcript and then puts all the mini notes together in the recap part, and then
You mentioned about extracting out conversations in Teams. So did you mention that about if you want to take out your conversation in Teams or your chat?
I talked about like Copilot transcription, which means that you wouldn't get this, but you'd get so you get the Copilot chat in meeting.
Yeah.
So you could ask questions while meeting, but afterwards you would get the recap.
But
If you've just got Copilot with like transcription on, then you can use the chat to get more information from the meeting notes. So say you didn't go to a meeting and you missed it, and then like, or that you got given a task, then you could use the chat to get more information about the task that you see from the summary. Like that.
yeah, that meeting recap is gold. So like, since you've had that enabled, you don't need to take notes during a meeting anymore.
No, interesting, actually interesting.
And also do it with just Teams Premium as well if you don't want to go down the Copilot route.
So that's a good step.
Same
to start.
thing.
Like,
Teams Premium will give you the recap. It won't give you the chat part. So you get the recap notes, but not the chat with it. So you wouldn't be able to like use the chat to like the notes, but you get the whole.
Like, how many times have you been in a meeting? Like, happens to me all the time, you know, where like you're in a meeting and there's a bunch of people you may be meeting for the first time and everyone does intros and it's like, oh yes, I am the lead of this project from this company or whatever, and you go through 10 different people and then you kind of forget who everyone is. You know, it happens to me all the time. So then instead of having to ask them, you can just open Copilot and just say, you know, what was Stephen's role again? And then it'll say, oh, Stephen was lead of this for that, you know? So you just interact with the meeting in real time.
I'll try that one. No good one.
Mhm.
I'll try that one.
Yeah.
And then
There's a feature that I read about. You can right click a meeting that you know that you can't be at.
I'll follow you.
I hear that's available for Microsoft employees.
Okay.
Not available for anyone else yet.
Yes, we love it.
I know. Yeah, cool, right?
That's
I kind of get it.
that's the new Outlook, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
The Classic doesn't have it.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's available to even outside.
No.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Is there any deal?
No, don't crack, Craig.
Chris is coming. Chris is coming.
I think
Hopefully it'll be here before Christmas, right?
Which Christmas?
Sorry, another question over here?
Sorry, is there any deal Microsoft is providing for any, like just for a like temporary usage for those people who are already using?
A trial use, you mean?
Yeah, kind of a trial. Let's say if my company is already using lots of other Microsoft products and then just to like experience with the wider business team to see the benefit of all these.
Yeah, so no trials at the moment, unfortunately, but the minimum purchase is 1 license. So if your business is interested in it, you could maybe buy 3 licenses and then you can reallocate those to people. You can say you can have it for 2 weeks and then another person can have it for 2 weeks.
Careful.
Subscription. So if you've got a license that's expiring, like a base license, saying that, and it's expiring 4 months, you can co-term it with that. So then
If you're buying through CSP or through distribution.
and then your first term would be that as per you just pay for it to renewal. So that is effectively a way to get like term. Copilot Pro, which is the personal family, that has a month trial, but not the commitment.
There's always the Copilot, the free Copilot with data protection, which is a really good introduction to it.
I think the Copilot is already, we are having connected in our edge.
Yes. So there's Copilot in it.
That's already something we are already using.
And once you actually get the Copilot license, then you can sign in not only on your free account, but also you can sign in on your work account. Therefore, have access to your work data
Right.
through Edge.
The web work tab.
So
Explain those 3 different options.
While Lauren does it, there's way more food. All the lawyers left all this amazingly.
Salted caramel slice, lemon slice.
God, how the lawyers get treated so well.
I can
Lemon
Quiches.
I'll get some caramels.
Basically, there's 3 different chat providers. Yeah. Copilot. You've got just Copilot. So if I'm not signed into this and I'm not signed in at all, I'm using Copilot. If I'm signed in with my work account and I have my email and this little green shield, then you're using
over here.
with commercial data protection. That means that your prompts and the responses in Copilot, any data that you feed into Copilot doesn't train it up line largely. And then if you've got Copilot for Microsoft 365, you have the work tab. That's using Copilot with graph grounded chat. So that chat is able to access your business documents. If you have this web plugin turned on, it will look at both the data from Microsoft Graph and web plugin and provide you answers. There's 3 different platforms to just your license and whether you're signed in. If you don't have Copilot for Microsoft 365, you don't see these tabs, you just automatically ingest with
From that work trend index, something to bear in mind with employees is that they're all using public generative AI like ChatGPT. You've got no control. So what you need to do as a business is block access to public models and make sure they're using data protected Copilot within the organisation, so you're not having that data leak.
Yeah, like if you're running with business premium or above, right, you get access to commercial data protection.
I think it's as well. All of them.
So if you got any 365 license, then
Yeah,
you get access to it.
yeah, we have some license. We have lots of licenses.
Yeah. Then you can have a play with it. Yeah. And then if you're seeing value, then next step would Teams Premium perhaps, and then full 365.
It's a good idea
Term license.
to introduce people.
3 months.
Like monthly, you can pay monthly as well. So a lot of clients that can work with a start of Teams Premium, they get using that in their meetings, then they kind of start getting the value from it, and then they go from that to a quote. Yeah. So it's good introductory.
Did you mention you had business premium?
Sorry?
Did you mention you had business premium?
No, for Copilot,
No, for
365.
I guess so. I'm not sure.
if you have business premium, you want to be aware, go through all the data protection before you switch on.
Because we are using Microsoft Dynamics. So
Look, I don't let you know. Yeah. It's really
we
good.
have lots of different licenses.
Are you licensing direct or is it through a partner?
I'm offering more. Please take.
I'm not
touch
very
your
sure
friends
about
upset.
that, but we have a direct contact as well.
If you've got
Okay.
friends and
We have
family,
some
take it home for
support.
them.
Can I ask what your company is?
Airways,
Okay, so you'd be a direct with Microsoft.
right? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's direct. We deal with a lot of things directly.
So I can't help you.
It's not mine.
Yeah.
But if
So you saying, can I get the better deal if I directly talk to Microsoft?
no, if you directly deal through distribution, of course you can do a better deal.
We've got more.
Price will be the same, and we can
Fancy food.
give you some more support. But there'll be an admin within your organisation that they will have access to the licensing or billing, and they'll be able to tell you what license bundle you're on. Because often I'm sure if you're direct, Microsoft has probably already been in contact to get you to do an uplift on your licensing.
Yeah, I think in my organization, there are some talks going on about the Copilot. Curious.
Yeah. And it'll be
That made me curious to come here and really see what it is.
Yeah.
And
How many people in the organisation?
little bit. I don't know the account.
More than 300?
Yes,
Okay, so
Definitely.
you'll be on an E3 license probably.
definitely.
Well, people are not in the room. Oh, missing out.
Okay.
You can't even see it.
Mhm. The people online missing all these goodies.
If you joined online.
Can we get a round for,
Yeah, Greg.
a round for Lauren?
We did, but we can do another.
Oh, we do another one. Oh, no.
Yes, thanks a lot for coming along, everyone. We try to keep these interesting and get different topics and stuff every month. If any of you have any experience and you've tried Copilot in your organizations and you'd like to come and tell us about your experience, let us know. More than open to that. If you have any suggestions of topics, we're keen to know that too. All right, we obviously want to be presenting content that resonates with you and is a valuable use of everyone's time rather than us just guessing every month. So if there's a specific topic request you'd like us to cover, let us know through the meetup group. Before we get that. Awesome. Well,